Hello there. For the last couple of weeks I've been running this class teaching how to use the alcohol technique with vellum and our stamping blends, and one of the ladies today is too ill to come, so this is for you, Joe, showing you how the techniques that we used at the class so you can replicate it at home as well. Now these cards were inspired by a few different people. The first person that really was a great instructional video was Michelle Jurista, but the colours for this one was inspired by Annie Alexander. That's what this one was inspired by. This card was inspired by Tennille Williams. She's an Australian demonstrator. And this card here, the technique for this card was inspired by Patty Bennett, but the actual arrangement was inspired by Carmen Sahadat Morris. So there's the acknowledgement for all these great cards as we learning different techniques. So this one's a blowing technique, this one's just dabbing technique, and this one's using an embossing folder as well as the vellum. Let's start off with this one here. I've got all my bits and pieces. So for this one I'm using a blower, or you can use a straw. Michelle Jurista used a straw for her. I just happened to have this blower in my drawer. It was a spritzer that you can use with markers to create a spray. It blows air. And I have seen some people who use an ear syringe, I think. Alright, here you go. Because I was teaching this to a range of different people, I actually did the demonstration several times. So there's some different variations on exactly the same theme depending on how much alcohol was applied and how much colour I've used on my projects. Alright. To do this I'll also show you, I've done all my stamping ready, but for this card I've used the iconic dies, hence the different shapes for the black silhouette there, which have lots of different choices that you can have, the mushrooms, flowers, bee, bird, fern, and class attendees could choose whichever they wanted to use. And the stamp set that I've used for the greetings is Welcoming Words, because I really love the gorgeous scripty font in that stamp set. Okay, now I'll just pop these up here. Now with the alcohol and the stamping blends, I've pre-cut my bird, pre-stamped my celebrate and my best wishes for inside the card. It's best to use vellum because it's a non-porous surface, so this enables you to play with the alcohol a bit. I've got a little bit of a sparkle from my gorgeous organdy ribbon there. Okay, I'm just getting a plastic sheet to pop underneath my workspace to protect it from any overspray of alcohol. This is just, as you can see, recycled from papers. I'm going to make sure nothing's underneath so it's nice and flat. So the colours I've used for this are Cherry Cobbler dark. So the dark colours work really, really well, and I've also used Rich Razzleberry, which I discovered the other day is no longer available in our Stampin' Up Connection, but we do actually have Blackberry Bliss, which I could use for this demonstration. That way I'm using something that's current. Okay, so I'm just putting a little bit of colour on my, and I've got a small piece for inside my card. A little bit of colour on my vellum because we're not going for an all over image on this one. Alright, this particular technique spritzes the alcohol on and then blows it before it dries. I've used, this is the alcohol that you need to use in Australia. It's over 90% alcohol. The isocol is not quite alcoholic enough for what you need to do to make the colour run. So this one's available from Big W. I've also been told it's available from Bunnings as well in Australia. Now I have decanted some of that into one of our spritzers. I just find that a little bit easier to use. And I'm going to just spritz my Stampin Blends there, and with the blower, and you could use your straw, just manipulate the colour around the vellum. Okay, you can, when your paper is dry, go back and put more colour on your vellum, and you can also add more alcohol. Now this stuff smells really strong, so I've got my window open here to enable me to be able to breathe okay. I'm going to add a bit more in the middle there and throw a little bit more colour around, and a little bit on this bit here. Oh goodness, that went sideways. Did you see that? Went way out that way. Okay, so I'm pretty happy with that arrangement there. Just a bit of colour and a little bit more. This time I'll check to see where the nozzle is. There it is. It's got a good little blower on this. I find it easier because not that you'd know, but I don't have a lot of air to be blowing around. It makes me cough. So that's the technique for the first kit. Okay, using alcohol spray and okay, as it dry now. It doesn't take long to dry at all. I'll pop this over here, and you can see on the white, so I've got little spritz marks on it as well. You can sometimes flick alcohol, that gives you a bit more texture as well. Alright, on the inside of my card, let me show you the inside so you can see what it looks like. I've just got a little bit of vellum and some black organdy ribbon at the top of it. So I'm going to use my seal. I have that seal show up underneath the vellum. I don't push too hard on it, but it works a treat. Goodness gracious, I mustn't have trimmed my cardstock properly on this one. So I'll just pop that in the middle and trim that later on. And then this one, well, let me check. Okay, I'm just going to put my seal on my white cardstock. One of the ladies today used our Tombow liquid glue, and that didn't show up under the vellum either. She was very happy with how that turned out. Okay, layer that over there. Look at that amazing detail on the back of the card. Just going to put a little bit of seal and then wrap my ribbon around. There we go. Make sure that's nice and straight. And get my card ready. Bit of seal over the top of the ribbon, and then I can pop that on the front of the card. And then I have my Celebrate here, which I might trim a little. This is just a little scrap from my scrap drawer from the offcuts of making cards, and I've used black Memento ink for my stamping there. I'm going to use mini dimensionals on this one just to be sure. Pop that, anchor that over the top of the ribbon, and then my bird, I'll just add a little bit of Tombow liquid glue. I'm not a big fan of this glue. I always make a mess. But it works really well for your detailed designs. And pop that up there. Okay. Now because I've got to trim my cardstock, I'm not going to do the inside for you, but you know how it works. Like that. So there's that card. And depending on how you use your alcohol and how you get a lot of alcohol, so the colour diluted a lot more, and that one I just splodged it all on. Okay, I love the look of that. Okay, I'll just pop that one aside. The next card, this little one, And this card uses a totally different technique. There's all the cards that I used in our demonstrations at the classes. So different variations in tone and colour, but basically it looks fairly similar depending on how much alcohol you add. Okay, so I used for this one the Quiet Meadows dies for that fern detail, and the greeting comes from the Coordinating Quiet Meadow Thinking of You, and with Granny Apple Green ink. I've already done my die cutting from the front using the fourth largest stitched rectangle framelit, so that's ready to go. Okay, I've already stamped my Thinking of You. I've already die cut my fern, ready to pop on the front. Alright, you probably want me to jump straight to the technique so you can see what the difference is between the blowing technique and that one. I need to pop all that out. Okay, here's my bits and pieces. That's for inside. That bit's extra. Everyone got to take that one home. Okay, now I'll bring in my protective paper again. So that for this one I used Granny Apple Green, Daffodil Delight and Bermuda Bay, and coloured all over my piece of vellum, all over it everywhere, just randomly all over. And some Daffodil Delight. I'm not being too particular about how it looks or how much they're joined up together, because the alcohol moves once, the colour of the ink moves once you add alcohol. Okay, and then some dark Bermuda Bay. I love this colour combination of the beautiful green. The choice for these colours for me comes from the colours beside each other on the colour wheel. So on your basic colour wheel you have blue and yellow, and in between blue and yellow is your greens. So this made a lovely calm combination of colour when it's all blended together. Oh yeah, so you can see bits and pieces showing out there through, and I have decanted a little bit of alcohol from the diggers, the same alcohol, into my container, and then using an old water brush, an old aqua painter. There's nothing in the reservoir, but using an old aqua painter, I'm just taking my brush, dipping it into the alcohol, and then just dabbing it on around about the edges of the colour. The more alcohol you add, the more it'll bleed. See how it's bleeding now? If I put it over on the white part, you can see it a little bit better. So if you don't want splodges that are too big, add less alcohol, or just keep going and not dip it into the reservoir. Alright, and if you do like them, grab a refill and there we go. Once the alcohol dries, you can also add a bit more colour as well. There we go, there's that one. I'll just let that dry for a bit. Add some more to my piece for inside the card. There we go. There. And the way to check, I mean, I've got my protective surface here. The way to check if you're happy with the colour saturation or intensity is to just pop it over the top of some white to see what the effect looks like. There we go. Just while that's all drying, I'm going to add my inside panel to the Granny Apple Green mat. Let's just pop that on there, and then I can add that to the inside of my card. It's almost dry. I can see it drying up there. So obviously my blade was starting to get a little bit blunt when I was cutting out these cards. Is that a rub? Okay, so there we go, there's that. Now are you drying? Yep. Flip that over. Not that you can really tell the difference from one side and another with this beautiful way of colouring. So there's the inside of my card done. Now for the front of my card. Look at that. That's all dry. Pop that onto my backing piece, and then because this is going behind the frame that I've already pre-cut, I'll just flip that around and find the bit that I like the best. Now I'm going to add some dimensionals around the edge of my frame here. So that this one on the bottom, using the edges of my dimensionals just about at the end of my packet. So this will stand out a little bit. There we go. Tear that one off. A little bit more on top. Okay, that should be enough. Peeling the back off all of the dimensionals. Oh, whoops. Took a bit more than I bargained for then. And that's going to be too close to the edge. There we are. And then I'll layer this over the top. And there's a beautiful panel on the front. Okay, with my fern, I'll just finish popping out all of the extra pieces. I'm also going to use dimensionals on the fern piece as well, so that it sits up a little bit over the top of the alcohol background. And the last one. Okay, and for this one I'll have to use mini dimensionals. Just put it strategically on a couple of places where it won't show up. And over there. Okay. And I'm just going to tuck that in the side there and take my fern across the top. And my thinking of you, oops, put some mini dimensionals, and this one not right on the very end because I'm going to overlap that over the side of my frame. There we go. There's the second technique for using alcohol inks. Alright, now for the clear my space, ready for the next one. My third card, which is this one here. Excuse me, this one was inspired by a technique that Patty Bennett was showing, but the shells came from Carmen. Okay, I've used Friends Are Like Seashells. I've also used the Seashells embossing folder. So I've already embossed my vellum, and we're going to basically sort of colour in the vellum and then add ink. I've already done most of my other stamping, but I'll show you the technique for this one. So once again, get my find a clean spot. Here's a clean spot. So hopefully you can see that. So I've got Cajun Craze, light and dark, and I've also got light and dark Night of Navy, light Bermuda Bay, and light Balmy Blue. The ladies today weren't big fans of Cajun Craze, but I really like it as a colour for the shells. So I'm just going to roughly colour in my shells as I can see them. I'm not too worried because when I add the out, it will bleed anyway. There's one shell. It looks like really nothing just at the minute. And a long shell there. Okay, there's a small shell there. Alright, with my dark Cajun Craze, I'm going to just use that to highlight bits and pieces of my shells. Rightio, so that's the shells done. Now I'm going to flip it over and on the other side do the seagrass, seaweed and the water, because that way when we add the alcohol the colours won't bleed into each other. Okay, so once again I'm not being very precise, and there we go, and then add a little bit of Night of Navy just around where the water would be, remembering that it will bleed and run as we add the alcohol. Okay, now you can see on my two variations here, this one I was fairly careful with the alcohol. I once again did it both sides. This one I was very liberal with the alcohol and the colour did run, even though they haven't mixed together, they've run on the other side and you can see through the vellum. Okay, so we're going to use the same technique as we did before with my brush and alcohol, and I'm just going to do exactly the same before and just dab a bit of alcohol on the ink on what I've coloured, and it just moves around to create a far more artistic image. Okay, and if you do like me, bleed beyond where the shows. Yeah, so that's outside. I just need to wait for that to dry a bit before I flip it over, otherwise I'm going to end up with Cajun Craze all over my workstation. Almost done. Almost done. When the girls were in class today, they had time to wait for it as they did other parts of the card, but I just wanted to show you the techniques. So once again, just splodging with my brush and alcohol. To create that lovely watery effect. Okay, and once again, once the alcohol is dried, you certainly can go back and add more colour with your Stampin Blends. Nice. Okay, just before we go anywhere, I'm going to blot that piece with my paper towel. There we go. Have a look on the white background. You can see how deep the colour intensity is on the card. And then once you've done that, then the decision is which side do you use, because on one side of the embossed vellum you can see more detail in the white, with the ink than the other side. So this one is more solid in the colour, but this side you can see more white from the vellum. So that's up to you which way you want to have that on your project. I'm just going to put that aside and put the rest of my card together while I'm waiting for that to dry. I've got my piece for inside, which is stamped with the lovely shell stamp sets from inside the set. I've used a masking stamp 3 and then added dots with the same colour Stampin Blends. Alright, in front of my card, again I've got the Night of Navy matte and the white piece underneath the vellum so that it shows off the vellum directly onto the navy. This is what it would look like. So it's far more intense, whereas if you put it on the white, it's much brighter colour. And I think I'm going to go with the pale side this time. Let me have another look. That one or that one? The shells look pretty good like that, but I think I'm going to go for the pale side. Very watery looking. And choose which way I want to have mine. I've gone this way every other time, so I think I'll just go that way. I'll pop that on the front of my card. And then the last remaining piece, I add my greetings and extra shells with some dimensionals. One's I have a new one. There, some little shells. So all the blends, paint brushes, the vellum we sell. Hang on, I'll put the greeting on first. This greeting was also punched out using the rectangle postage stamp punch. So there we go. Pop that underneath there. And there we go. So to recap, I'll bring in all the cards again so that you can see the ones that we did today. So there's that one, which looks quite different to the others that I've done. It's a matter of personal preference, which way you like it. I could always go back and add a bit more colour to those bits. Get rid of that. So there's that one. Here's the one with the quiet meadow. And here's the one featuring the iconic dies. I hope you've enjoyed that, and I hope you give it a go. It's a really fun technique. Bye-bye now. And thanks, Margie, for joining me.